Welcome to another episode of #Winning. Yuri here, and today I'm going to share with you 5 lessons I learned from David Beckham. So David and I, Bex, as he's known, we go way back. Back to the old days, back when we used to play. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I don't actually know David Beckham personally, but we share a lot in common. We love soccer. And I want to share 5 lessons I learned from him that I think are very, very pertinent to you and your business and your growth as a human. And in case you want to kind of see some of this stuff in vivo, just watch his latest documentary on Netflix. It's called Beckham. It's really, really good. And as I mentioned before, I love watching documentaries from people who've done great things in life. I think the Arnold documentary on Netflix is phenomenal. Robert Lewandowski, if you're into soccer, you know who he is. There's a documentary of his on Amazon Prime. Basically, anyone who's done anything of value in this world, I'm fascinated by. I want to kind of get under the hood and look at what is it that makes them tick? How have they achieved that level of success? Because I find that, for me at least, very admirable. And those are traits that I want to be able to develop as well. So, all right, so let's dive into this. So the first thing that I learned from David Beckham is never give up. So he, just a bit of context. So he spent his childhood and early adult life playing for Manchester United, and he was one of the best players in the world at the time. They won the treble. He was the captain of England for, I think, 50 some odd caps. So he basically achieved like God status in soccer. He was also married to Posh Spice, Victoria Beckham. So at the time, again, this is going back like 20 years, they were like the royal family in terms of their celebrity status. Okay, like that's just like the level, like the tabloids and news in Britain is intense, especially if you're in the public eye like that. And so just imagine like they're as probably more famous than the royal family, and everyone is following them around. Paparazzis are taking pictures of them, dropping their kids off at school, like crazy. So there came a point in his time at Manchester United where he started there at 14 years old, and I believe into his late 20s, that's when he finished, but it wasn't by his choice. He was actually, just out of the blue, sold. And I think what had happened was Alex Ferguson, who was the coach of Manchester United, they started kind of butting heads a little bit because Beckham was a little bit, and kind of like stubborn, had his own way of wanting to do things, hairstyles, etc. Alex Ferguson didn't like the fact that he was married to Posh Spice. He felt that it was a distraction, although Beckham never really showed it on the field. So like that, he decided to cut or sell David Beckham to Barcelona. And then Beckham had asked if he could go to Real Madrid instead. And that's the interesting thing about soccer. It's like your whole world can be flipped upside down based on someone else's decision. That's why I retired from pro soccer, was because I didn't like having my fate, my future in someone else's hands. And that's why I stopped playing when I was 24 and a half. So anyways, he goes to Manchester United, which is the only club he ever wanted to play with for his whole life. And then he also loved Real Madrid. So, he ended up going to Real Madrid, which at the time was like the superstar team, the Galacticos. They had Luis Figo, Zinedine Zidane, Raul up front, Casillas and net, like just Ronaldo. I mean, such an amazing team. So he goes to Real Madrid and kind of had a tough time kind of getting into it. And Real Madrid was basically, they weren't kind of finding their groove. And then they hired a coach, fired the coach, hired another coach, fired the coach. So they brought a coach in who had actually been the assistant coach at Manchester United for, I think, 2 years, Carlos Queiroz. And this is the one coach that David Beckham did not like, and that coach did not like him. So when he came to Real Madrid, he basically, I can't remember exactly why. It was either him or Fabio Capello, one or the other. I can't remember, so don't quote me on this. Basically, they told David, like, hey, here's what happened. A couple years forward, he decided to go to the LA Galaxy and play in the US. But he still had a number of months under his contract at Real Madrid. So Fabio Capello, who is an Italian coach who came into Real Madrid, said to Beckham, you will train by yourself. You don't train with our team anymore. So like the team is training, and Beckham is like doing laps with one of the trainers around the field every single day. And it was Fabio Capello, that's right. So Fabio Capello was, after several weeks, he mentioned this in a documentary, he was impressed that David would show up to practice before anyone else. He kept doing the work every single day. He never complained. He never gave up. He just kept doing it. And it gave Fabio Capello a different view into David at the time. And then his teammates, Roberto Carlos, Ronaldo, Zinedine Zidane, they're like, hey, Fabio, like, it'd be great if David could play with the friggin' team. Like, come on. Like, we know he's leaving the LA Galaxy, but come on. Like, I think it would be worth it. So anyways, he brought him back into the team. They trained, he played, he felt at home, they did very well. So what's interesting is that was one example, but there was many examples in his career where he just didn't give up. There was a game that England played against Greece, and they had to, I think, tie the game to make the World Cup. And they were showing clips of this game, and David was all over the field. Like, he was chasing guys down, slide tackling, getting the balls. Like, he was playing every position because he knew that if they didn't get at least a point from that game, they were not making the World Cup. And he was like a bat from hell, doing whatever he possibly could to never give up, to just keep at it and keep going. And eventually they got a free kick outside the box. Beckham steps up, rips it top corner. They tie the game. They make it to the World Cup. There's many examples of this in the documentary and obviously throughout his life. And I think one of the great things that amazing people have in common is they never give up. And I think David and this documentary is a really good example of that in action. Like, there's so many examples where, you would have just thrown in the towel. So the next lesson actually ties into this. I'll tie both these together. So the second lesson is don't take anything personally. I talked about this in one of our previous videos. Don't take shit personally. So imagine this. You are the most adored person in the entire country, okay? Everyone loves you. You are put on a pedestal. You can't do anything wrong. And then you do. And then the complete opposite happens. So in the 1998 World Cup, Argentina is playing England's team that Beckham was obviously, part of. And it was the round of 16. So winner moves on, loser goes home. And Diego Simeone, who's a relatively dirty player at the time, who now coaches Atletico Madrid, he wanted to rile up Beckham in the game. So in one of the moments of the game, he actually tackled him from behind, and it wasn't a clean tackle, and put David right on the floor. And Beckham, he just did a little flick of his foot, like a retaliation flick. And it was honestly insignificant today. Like, you wouldn't even be carded for that. He got red carded. She was on the ground. Diego Simeone was standing up, and he just flicked his leg. Not like a full-out punch in the face or anything. Just flicked his leg at Diego Simeone. The ref came over and red carded him. So Beckham gets red carded, which means he had to leave the field, had to leave the game. And then England and Argentina go to penalty shots, and Argentina wins in the shootouts. Now, from that point forward, for the next several years, Beckham was fucking despised. So imagine going from you are the poster child of England to the devil. People are spitting at him walking down the street. Like, imagine, like, he's walking down the street, people are spitting at him, swearing at him, death threats, kidnapping threats, all sorts of stuff. Like, it was crazy. These people are fucking delusional, right? And somehow he's able to move through all that. Now, he talks about how difficult it was. Now, again, I say don't take things personally. Like, I don't think I'm hopefully not adding any kind of lightness to this situation. He plays for England still. They have a home game at Wembley Stadium, and he enters the field and he is booed by his own fans. Booed by his own fans. He's on England. They're playing in England, and the English supporters are booing him when he walks on the field and every time he touches the ball. Can you imagine that? He goes to take a corner kick, and his own fans are booing at him, yelling at him, shouting shit and profanity at him. And this goes on for years. So imagine, so again, he's still playing for Manchester United at the time. So when this is happening, every single game he's playing with Manchester United, he's getting the same treatment. Like, people are just destroying him in the stands. Imagine this. Every single week you play a game, you know this is going to happen for 2-3 years. Like, it was non-stop. And to still be able to go through that and somehow make sense of it and not just like jump off a bridge is remarkable. Now, you can see in the documentary that this is probably the one thing it's affected him at a very deep level, for sure. But at the time, he went through a depression. It was a really, really hard time. So when I say don't take anything personally, I don't think any of us, you or I, will ever go through anything that is as bad as what Beckham went through in terms of it's not just like a few people like leaving negative comments on your stuff, like online. Every single person you ever come across fucking hates you. Can you imagine this? Just imagine you go to the grocery store. People are spitting at you, swearing at you, telling you you're a piece of shit. It's because of you that England lost. And they forget that in the shootout, England shit the bed and there were players on that team that missed their penalty shots. Maybe that could have been a reason they didn't lose or they didn't win. People forget that. Just imagine like you in that situation being heckled and criticized and non-stop every day of your life, and to still function, as a soccer player at that level, or to just kind of go through life was phenomenal. What he talked about, and I'll tie this into tying this into the first lesson, never give up. He kept going. He never gave up. He wanted to make amends for the mistake he had made. And, he wanted to kind of regain that love from the English population, which eventually he did. So I say never give up. I'm just one example. Don't take anything personally. To the best of his ability, I think he did a pretty good job there. And the third lesson is find your tribe. His solace was when he went to practice with Manchester United, because he would deal with all this shit. But as soon as he went into the training grounds, the team, the coach, they're like, we got you. You're safe here. We will protect you. And I think that was he mentioned this, it was a really, really important piece to his ability to move through all that hate, is because he had a family, a tribe of people who were like, David, we got you. We will protect you. We got your back. And they're not demonizing him. They realized it wasn't his fault that they lost out of the World Cup. So finding your tribe is really important, because I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for him to go through. And if he went through that by himself, even with him and Victoria, just the two of them, I think, who knows? Right? And this is not in a time when mental health was ever talked about, right? Like mental health and all that kind of stuff now is a big thing. People talk openly about it. Back then, you don't, right? It wasn't discussed. It's just get on with it, do your stuff, get to work, and keep moving forward. So in your life, really think about, especially if you're building a business online, not everyone understands what it is we do. Not everyone understands what this whole internet thing is. How's that internet thing going? Yeah, okay, that adds a lot of credibility to, thank you. How's that medical school thing going? Says no one, right? But how's that internet business thing going? No one, your family doesn't understand, right? Your friends don't understand. You got to be around people who get you, who get what you're going through. And that's part of the reason why I think having a group coaching program is so powerful, because isolation kills, community heals. And I've never experienced any one-on-one coaching relationship that's more powerful than a community-based coaching program. Because if you're around dozens or hundreds of other people just like you, now it's not just you and the coach. It's you, the coach, coaches, and hundreds of other people that are just like you, who get you, who can lift you up when you're down, who can keep you going when the going gets tough, who understand what it's like to feel what you're feeling. And that's very, very important, right? If you look at the blue zones, community is one of the most important aspects to why these people live to more than 100. It's not just because they eat better and exercise. The community piece is really, really important. So finding your tribe is lesson number 3. Number 4 is, I'm just probably sipping my greens here. The fourth lesson is details matter. And David, I didn't realize this, but it's not surprising. He's kind of fanatical, obsessive about clean environment. So his closet, everything is organized, his drawers, his shirts, it's beautiful. Kitchen, he cleans it himself because he wants it just right. And I posted about this on Facebook, and it's very interesting to see people's opinions on this, right? And the post was something along the lines of the one thing I've realized that a lot of successful people have in common is that they obsess over the small details. And some people are like, well, yeah, but there's also a lot of messy people who are successful too. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Whatever. So yeah, there's morning people and there's not morning people who are successful. I'm not saying it's only this, but I've noticed that it's not about cleanliness. It's about this obsession over small details. And I've noticed this with Steve Jobs as an example. Steve Jobs could be considered by some as a tyrant. And I feel like I'm this sometimes as well. I get really bent out of shape over small things, but I also understand which small things don't matter. For instance, we had our media buyer made a bit of a mistake with our ads the other day, and he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know that I set this up as an ABO instead of a CBO campaign, and I mistakenly spent $7,000 extra today. I'm like, it's all good, man. We learned the lesson. We're not going to happen again. Cool. So some people might freak out about that. I don't care. It was next, move on. But when I see something else, we have an email campaign that was put together and there were no tracking links put in the links on the emails, I'm like, yo, what the F? And I get bent out of shape with little details like this because they are representations of owner-like commitments, right? So the difference in two scenarios is that our director of marketing said, hey man, I fucked up on this. Sorry about this. Cool. He acknowledged the mistake. Scenario two, copywriter who unfortunately no longer with us because we let him go, writes these emails, no tracking links on the emails, and no acknowledgements of the fact that there's no tracking links. Big difference. And that's why one of our core values is owner-like commitments. I have a very hard time, or I don't have anyone on my team who doesn't have owner-like commitments. I expect everyone on my team to own their business or own their role as if it's their own business, as if their livelihood depended on it. Because guess what? It does. And this is what I think great people have in common. And you could say to the contrary, well, that's, some fucking stupid comment on Facebook was like, yeah, they're OCD because they have they have trauma that wasn't dealt with. I'm like, I don't fucking care. That's fine. Like, it is what it is. But the reality is like, there's a level of obsession because you love the craft, that you take pride in what you have and what you do, whereby the small details matter. What's the big difference if you don't make your bed, if your closet's a bit messy? Is it the end of the world? I think so. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. But Yuri, there's a lot of really successful people who are messy. I get that. That whatever. But that's not the standard that I want to live by, right? I don't know about you, and I'm not here to give you parenting advice, but if you've got kids, I'm assuming you ask them to make their bed, you ask them to clean up after their mess. Like, why would you do that? Like, if we validated, just leave your room like shit. You don't have to put your clothes away. Just leave all your dirty clothes on the ground. Don't ever brush your teeth. Don't ever wash. Don't ever make your bed. Just call it a fucking day. I don't think any of us would condone that type of behavior as a standard for our kids to aspire to. So with my kids, I can be a little bit obsessive about this. I'm like, guys, can you please clean up the mess? Please make your bed. Like, how many times am I going to ask you the same thing? And I get bothered by that because it's a reflection of how I want them to show up in the world. Now, I'm also very aware of the fact that sometimes you just got to accept what it is and let go of the expectations. I'm aware of that. But if you're going to live in my house, I don't want to live in chaos, right? I want a clean environment. And I also want my kids to grow up building habits and basic disciplines of standards for their life. Like, I've talked about this before. You walk by someone's car and it looks like a fucking dump inside. I don't need to know much else about this person. I know exactly what I need to know. And that's you could say it's a big stereotype and a generalization, but it's not. Like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's why when I look at Beckham and I look at how he organizes his house, his closets, his kitchen, the pride he takes in the little things, that's why he is great. Because it's not about how he cleans the kitchen. It's that same level of thought and obsession that he takes into his craft. Like, I'm going to take care of these details. I'm going to work on this free kick a million times until I get it right. Those are the details that separate good players from great players, from average to above average, incredible, masters. And I'm not saying I was, anywhere near Beckham in terms of greatness, but when I was playing in France, one of the things I would do is when I would finish training with the team, I always stayed out, every single day, I stayed after practice. And I was a goalkeeper, and we had this huge mesh behind one of the training grounds. And what I would do is I would just keep all the balls. I'd be like, hey coach, give me the balls. I'll put them back afterwards. And I would work on my drop kicks, right? So a variety, when a goalie catches the ball and kicks it up, there's a variety of ways you can kick the ball. You can do a drop kick where it bounces just before you kick it. You can do a side kick for more directness, whatever. So I would work on those on my own after practice. And remember, I'm 24 years old at the time. I know how to kick the ball, but I was obsessed with getting a little bit better because in my mind, what I'm thinking of is game application. Corner kick comes in or a cross comes in. I come up and catch it. I have the ball. Can I release a striker who's in a 1v2 situation at the top of the field right away with a laser precise kick? So that's kind of the outcome I'm envisioning. And I'm like, if I can practice this and get better and better and better and better, Well, then I'll be able to execute that more often. So I would stay after practice and I would pick a point on the mesh. And I would tell myself, I don't leave the training ground until I do 10 in a row in that spot. And sometimes it would take me some time. So I'd be there for like an hour and a half after practice. Sometimes I'd be there for 20 minutes. But I'm like, I'm not leaving until 10 of those balls in a row hits that spot. That's the level of obsession we have to become great at whatever we want to do. And again, I really believe that I was one of the best goalkeepers in the world at the time. Now, probably wasn't because I called it a day, but I think that's more desire than anything else. Anyways, number four is details matter. Number five, fifth lesson I learned is that you can retire from your obsession. Grant Cardone has an amazing book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. I think it really encapsulates what we're talking about here. The thing is, Nick Saban, who is the head coach of the Alabama Crimson football team, one of the most successful NCAA football coaches, he has a quote that says, he's like, high performers don't like mediocre people and mediocre people don't like high performers. And I think that's very true because what I'm sharing with you in this series rubs some people the wrong way. And that's because they're not winners. And what I just said is going to piss them off even more, but I don't care because the reality is this: you will only take things personally when you know it's something true about yourself. So if I say that this channel is for people that are obsessed with being better, this series of #winning is dedicated to you, the person who is obsessed with winning, not at the expense of other people, not in a zero-sum game. It's winning in terms of like getting better and understanding there is no winning the game. Like the game is just playing the game. That's how you win. And that like obsession is a healthy thing, right? It's good to be obsessed with something. It's good to be obsessed with something that gets you out of bed in the morning, that keeps you going all day long. And people talk about well, I don't agree with that. I'm all about balance. Cool. This is not the place for you, right? You want to have balance? Ciao. If you're obsessed and you want greatness, this is where it's at. I don't agree with you, Yuri. You're going to burn out. Ciao. You can't burn out from something you're obsessed about. So burnout, I believe, is it's the meaning we internalize based on what we're going through. So I was burnt out as a trainer working 12 to 14 hours a day because I didn't enjoy it, because I was doing something I knew wasn't my obsession. I loved helping people, but not in that format. I work the same amount of time now. I mean, maybe not 10 hours a day, but I still work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, but I fucking love it. Do I feel burnt out? Never. Are there challenges? 100%. There's way more challenges than there were 20 years ago, but I love what I do. And when you have an obsession and you're working on that passion, you don't get burnt out. It's just it's like part and parcel with the journey. It's like you love it. Now, obviously as a soccer player, your body can't keep up with that demand. So by the time you're 35, 36, 37, you're feeling like shit every morning when you get out of bed. So David Beckham retired when he was 38, I believe. And he was playing for Milan in Italy. Then I think he finished at Paris Saint-Germain. And that was his last game. He had a friggin' emotional breakdown on the field because he knew this was it. But here's the thing. Right away, he got into what's next. And so he, with his contract with the LA Galaxy, he actually had in his contract, it said he would be able to buy an MLS team. So literally as soon as he retired, right away, he was on to the next thing, Inter Miami. So that's the club that he owns in the MLS. And he will probably never stop from what he's doing in some way, shape, or form related to soccer, because you can't retire from your obsession. When we're hiring for different roles in our company, in the final interview, I'll ask people what questions do you have for me or about the company or about the role, whatever. And a lot of people, higher level roles, they'll say why do you do what you do? What's your vision? What gets you jazzed up? And I tell all of them, I'm I have no intention of selling our business. I want to build Healthpreneur into a legacy that lasts beyond my lifetime. We're going to help 1 billion people. We're going to build a brand that every single person on the planet recognizes, whether they're a health professional or not. And I'm never going to stop. I love doing the work. Is it going to evolve? Am I going to change some of the stuff that I'm doing? Yeah, for sure. But I'm never going to I'm not going to sell the business and sit on a beach. That's never going to happen. I'll spend half a day there. It's fine. I'm going to spend some time in our friggin' place in Mexico overlooking the Pacific Ocean 1,000,000%. But what do you think I'm going to be thinking about while I'm swimming laps while whales swim by? Or I'm sitting on the chair overlooking the vast horizon? What do you think I'm going to be thinking about? Nothing? No way. It's going to be like, how do I add value to our audience? How do I better help our clients win? How can I come up with new content ideas that it's going to inspire people to wherever they want to go? That's never going to stop. And if you're like me, you're obsessed with some aspect of what it is you do. And that's, I think, really, really healthy. And I unfortunately think that we have all been sold a lie, which is called retirement. And I don't know about you, but I have seen many people just go downhill as soon as they cash in the chips. My mom being one of them. So she retired when she was, I don't even know, 60. And it's just a train wreck. I mean, I love my mom to shreds, but it's really, really hard to see someone with no purpose in life. And, that human beings, I think animals in general, we're all meant to have a purpose. Like if you think of, those greyhound dogs, those like really fast and they run on like the horse track sometimes, like they have those greyhound races. Can you imagine? So those races, a lot of times they'll have like a bunny, or I don't even know if it's a fake bunny or a real bunny. I don't think it's a real bunny. They send the bunny and then the dogs chase after it. Now, can you imagine if the dog caught the bunny? Like, what would it do? It would stop. It would, shake it around, break its spine, and then it'd be like, now what? When my dogs, we put one of them down a number of years ago, but when they were small, like we had 2 miniature wiener dogs. When they were small, I used to throw a tennis ball. And while the ball was moving, they would run after it. As soon as it stopped, they stopped. Because they're not really like, fetch type of dogs, but generally they had a target, they had a purpose to move towards. But as soon as it stopped, it's like, I'm done. I think we're the same. I know we're the same. You, me, we need a purpose. We need a reason to get out of bed every single morning. And that might evolve. So for David Beckham, it was playing soccer. Now it's still being involved in soccer and helping Inter Miami become the best team they can be, and obviously doing whatever he wants to do as his journey unfolds. But I don't know many people who are very content when they stop doing the thing they love. It's one thing to stop doing something you hate, but if you love what it is you do, then why would you ever have to stop? Because as I mentioned, for me, I felt very different working about the same amount of time when I was working one-on-one with clients as I do now doing work that is my life's work. There's a very big difference between doing busy work and your life's work. And if you're doing your life's work, yes, it will evolve, but it should never stop. And I would implore you to build your life around a purpose you never want to retire from. I tell my kids as a joke, I'm like, guys, if I ever get to a point where I can't walk up a hill, please put me in a wheelchair and wheel me off the cliff, right? If I get to a point where I'm on a ventilator because I can't even breathe because I'm so out of shape, just pull the plug, right? If I ever get to a point in my life where I'm sitting on the couch every single day, mindlessly watching TV because I have no more purpose, just inject me with something, like as a joke. I'm like, call it a day. Because the thing is, I just like, we just disintegrate into nothingness without a purpose. And the purpose doesn't have to be building $1 million or $1 billion brand. I don't know what your purpose is. I don't know what lights you up. But if you're here, it's mostly because I think you're growth oriented and you value contribution in this world. And if you're like me and you're obsessed with adding value and contribution to people's lives, that is something you can't stop. I will never stop making videos. Like what's interesting is my first business was largely based on content, right? We did thousands of videos on YouTube. And then with Healthpreneur, that's what it's also started to morph into. Like most of our traffic and revenue comes from our advertising, but I don't have to shoot these videos. Like here's the thing, I work with, it's like discretionary work. When I look at my calendar, most of what I do, I don't have to do. And I'm like today, whatever it is, Thursday, I'm shooting this. I look at my calendar, I have a coaching call that I'm hosting and I have a workday with my trainer. That's it. I could literally do nothing. I could chill. I mean, my son is in the other room. He's staying home today because he's not feeling too well. And yes, I spend time with him. We hang out, whatever. But I could literally do nothing most days of the week, but I would go crazy. And it's not that I have to be involved in different aspects of the business. I don't. I've got great people doing their stuff, but there's an inner, it's like I'm being pulled from an outer force that just is like, I'm compelled to contribute. I'm compelled to help in some way, shape, or form. I'm compelled to share my value. And I hope you appreciate it. I mean, I'm sure you do if you watch these videos. I truly appreciate you spending the time because I know you could be doing other things. And so I share this with you because I do think having an obsession is very, very healthy. So just to recap, the 5 lessons I learned from David Beckham. Number 1 is never give up. Number 2 is never take anything personally. Number 3 is find your tribe. Number 4 is the details matter. And number 5 is you can never retire from your obsession, or at least I don't think you should. So out of those 5 lessons, which one most resonates with you? Let me know in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you much. Thank you much. Thank you very much for joining me today. Keep rocking, keep being great, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Let's talk about why you will never get where you want to go by yourself and why anyone else won't do the same. I see this all the time. I'm just gonna like try some stuff out on my own for a bit and figure this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if you knew how to get there, you'd already be there, but you don't know how to get there, which is why you're not there.